All right, all right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's from Studio 10 Broadcasting, 10 o'clock talks. This is the Dark Side Radio Network. With me is James Wigginton. Brings history from the other side of the ocean to this side of the ocean with crafts and history. And he's a man of mystery who studies into many different topics that we all love, such as Bigfoot, hauntings, UFOs, and some project manner subject matter, military industrial complex, and more. So, everybody, please, if you can, welcome James and share us out the best you can. Subscribe, hit us on YouTube and all the other posts that we upload too. And I'm sure Beth behind the glass, who's running that today from a foreign location, aka will be hiding and sharing us on to some of the groups. So we might get some people joining us. They didn't expect a Sunday afternoon, but it's always nice to have a pleasant surprise. And I'm honored to have you in because I know you come with a lot of information. You're well informed. You're educated, self-educated. You have this huge interest, as I do, on all the different levels of the mystery. So, where do you want to start, James? And if you want, please say hello to everybody. And also, if you want to tell them again, we always reserve the right for privacy. So it's up to you on what you like to say. It's your own disclaimer here.
Well, I just want to say hello, everyone. And I think with these groups, whether it's Michael's or B's or whomever, is a good thing because it gets knowledge out there, and no one person knows everything. Some may think they do, but no one knows everything, and it's good to share because if I can pick up on one little piece of information, I say I can learn something or have learned something or relearn something.
Yeah. I have to agree with you. I also want to, let's do a good shout out here from Michael in the studio to B. Honestly, I wouldn't have been able to connect with you if it wasn't from her. So there's that piece of information that you just made this whole statement about because you bring so much to the table. And even if we agree to disagree, we all go home as friends and we have a great time. And that's how we prosper in America with information. We all have the right to choose. Never no force here by anybody or anyone. So you brought up a project. Would you care to elaborate on this one particular objective that you mentioned in the green room that may be able to enlighten some people and maybe give us a little guidance through it? We might get some audience participation that knows about it. We may not. So let's see how we can percolate the interest here.
Well, one of my favorite projects, and I tripped over years ago, and it has been somewhat sugar-coated in the latter years, is Project High Jump.
Yeah,
with Admiral Byrd. And I think it was started or set in motion in December of 1956, which gives it quite a few years ago. But they wanted to go to Antarctica and see what was going on there. From what I understand, before the end of the World War II, the Germans were taking U-boats down there and taking their anti-gravity information, and I think they even had a saucer or two they took down there. I've seen pictures on the internet of it, and it looks like it was a saucer made back in the 40s, but it was still somewhat impressive. And Admiral Byrd, if y'all remember, it was the one that did the Hollow Earth thing. And it seems like if anybody was going to be put out the pasture and retired, it would have been him. But for some reason, they didn't do it. So he takes his troops down there, which I think there were 4,700 troops, 13 ships. One was an aircraft carrier. And I've heard anywhere from 13 to 30-something airplanes. But anyway, he goes down there, and when he gets right at Antarctica, from what I understand, the saucers came out and kicked his butt. So he came back. And what it was is the Germans had set up a base down there. Now, it gets pretty deep who helped them set this base up. there's a lot of stories out there, true or not, I can't say, that lizard race was living down there. And I watched a thing just a while ago about Linda Morton Howe did her interview with this guy called Brian.
Yeah.
And he was stationed down there with the C-130 transports. And he talked about all his trips made, and I think he said he had something like 4,000 hours in the air, which is quite a few hours of flight time.
Right.
But he was one of the crew members, and the crew was usually always the same bunch of guys that went down there. And I've heard different stories upon where they dug into the ice and went down 2 miles. And one of his stories were they talked about they found an ancient civilization down there. And he gets into it. And you've all heard the stories about the fly zone or no fly zone.
Yeah. They
saw a great big, hole in the ice. And he said he estimated it was probably the length of a football field, which is a great big hole. And it was supposed to be a no-fly zone. And when they got back, they went to help a guy out that had gotten injured. They were going to pick him up and take him to, eventually get him to Christchurch in New Zealand for medical care.
That's right. You reminded me of something. This was over an injury and just getting him back more safely on a shorter ride, correct?
Right. And when they got back, evidently this one guy, they said he didn't make him sign the disclosure certificate, but he did tell him he didn't want anybody talking about this. And they said for never to go in this area again. And one other time, they had to go around it. They had to make like a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn to go around this area. And he never could figure out why, because they had posted it as a atmosphere testing station. And he couldn't understand why, because they were about 25,000 feet in the air. And he didn't think that would mess up the air atmosphere. But anyway, and I think the guy eventually did go ahead and die. But he talked about he saw some discs down there on a mountain range, and some other guy on another flight crew, they were comparing notes, and he saw the disc too. And then he went to one place out in the Antarctica. They were going to pick up some scientists they had taken out there, because they had lost contact with the scientists, and they were supposed to call in on a daily basis. But a few days went by, they didn't call, so they went out there. And usually when they fly over with a C-130, it's a pretty good-sized plane. People come out and wave at them and say hello and all that good stuff.
Right.
And he said they didn't find a person. And he said, well, they flew around and landed and went in, and there wasn't anybody there. And I mean, there's no place to go. You know what I mean? I mean, you're in the middle of an ice-covered glacier, so to speak. And so they got back in their plane, came back home. And he said a few days later they were sent on a rescue mission to pick up these scientists. And he said when they picked them up, there were 15 of them. And they got on board the plane, and he said, which was unusual, he said they got on board the plane before all the cargo got loaded. And he said they sat down, and he said they didn't say a word all the way back. He tried to talk to them, and they wouldn't even talk to him. They just kind of had a scared look on their face. And, they brought them back, and then they took these scientists, and they took them somewhere else in a plane. And he never heard anything else about it. And he said the cargo ended up in Christchurch in New Zealand. And he said he thought he heard a rumor that it went to a base, Army base in Ohio. Well, there's only one big Army base in Ohio, and that's Dwight Patterson.
You're right, at Patterson. Everything seems to go there too, and in the mystery.
Yeah, it has since Roswell.
Right. And if I may just interject, I'm all in on this story, and it's fascinating stuff. It really is. I had come across some information that before I forget it, I feel it's important that I mention it. This was not the only trip that had taken place by the Admiral. And also, the family now is sharing some of his writings that he made before his demise, his natural time on this earth. He made some handwritten notes, and the family now is getting some of that information out there. And it was really a mystery from what the pilots had released as far as these scientists, the quietness, the looks on their faces, no conversation, the total silence in the plane. It was rather awkward. That was shared. One of the other things that come into place is something called the Garthia, the center to the earth, the opening of the eye of the pole, the no-fly zone. Some say that actually the Admiral's plane lost its own ability. Something took it over and actually guided it in. So there's some speculation there. Now that goes into another far out narrative. It brings Corey Goode into it. I don't know if you know of Corey Goode and his story.
No, I've heard the name.
But
I have heard this story before, years ago.
Yeah, the space program and the fact of everything that you're saying is some type of something down there that reflects. And Linda Moulton Howe, key element here, who also had on another guest who described working down there and going through rooms made of basalt with ancient script writings and lithographs and more all over the walls, if I'm using the right identification of what they were looking at, with ceilings that had some type of gravity type of technology, because the walls never met the ceilings anywhere, and the rooms illuminated a light of no light source, but yet had light. And I think I want to take you into a step further. Let's walk from the past into the future a little bit. What the hell happened up there that Obama had to go, that Kerry had to go, the day of the election of all times, and more, the Russian Pope? And what did the Vatican send to him? Well, it seems that they came across something in the East, and they had to get it up to the Antarctic, and special papers and documents that the Pope had at the Vatican. And isn't that a 53-mile long mystery under the Roman Empire? But it had to do with the Ark of Gabriel, which is a form of a high technology weapon. As all indications show, what we know of what the Ark of the Covenant looks like, this is very similar of an exact, some may say, well, what's the word I'm looking for here? I got a little bit of a brain fog. But anyway, they duplicated it. I'll go that way. And but it was some type of alien type early civilization weaponry, where if you got near it and didn't know how to handle it, and you didn't have these papers from the Vatican, you would have issues. But it makes you wonder, because we do know, and these things can be looked up. And there's other whistleblowers that did come through that Linda verified stories with of what they encountered, what they saw. And they say there are things down there that are indescribable. And then Buzz Aldrin, he went there, if you can relate to that.
Scary.
Yeah, and he basically had a heart attack over of a fear of what.
He said they were evil.
Yes, exactly. So is this part of everything in the last 2 years? Is this, are these, I mean, I don't want to get into the big P here. I'm not looking to take that dive. I think people need a little bit of a break from it, but who do the rich answer to? Why are all these narratives important? What is the end game? Do all the answers lie in the Antarctic? And I'll leave it with that. And please continue. I hope I didn't take you out of mind and thought.
Oh no, I agree with you. And there's if you ever watch the show Stargate, it's a science fiction show.
I'm aware of it. Yes.
Okay, on one of their episodes, they had where he sat in a chair. As a matter of fact, they went to Antarctica, I believe it was, and he sat in a Montauk chair or something like that. But anyway, this chair, you sit back in it, and it controlled these weapons. And, a lot of people on these science fiction shows, they say, oh, the computer graphics and stuff is really good. But if you ever look at some of these science fiction shows, look at them as trying to learn something. It's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's 3 different messages in that one movie, and that I know of. There may be more, but I think there's some truth to some of this science fiction stuff, because these writers have to come up with this stuff somewhere, somehow.
Like Spielberg.
And, yeah. I mean, they just didn't pull it out of the air. They had to hear a story, and if you'll listen to some of the words and technology they use, and you trace that back, and there is an old story, or there is a story about, this coming from some piece of information somewhere. And I think there's a lot to it. And when I heard about the aliens they're a lizard race. And I call them chocolate-eyes, but call that. Anyway,
Draconians, maybe.
This is food for thought for people. I want to.
Wrong kind of food.
Get some food for thought on this. Get some feedback on it. And I'm not going to get into the religion or politics, or try not to, but a Garden of Eden, you had Adam and Eve, his second wife, and then you had
exactly. Thank you for saying that part of the second.
Yeah, and think of the snake not as a snake. What if that was a lizard?
But it's been a representation throughout history.
Yeah, and you got to remember, these people, well, they didn't know what cell phones were, electricity, or anything else. And it's easier to say snake than it is a lizard, because everybody knew what a snake was. So I don't know. It's just food for thought. I have always wondered about that. And but anyway, this lizard race, evidently, they cannot come in and just take over. You have to kind of somewhat invite them in other words.
Right.
I don't know if any of that's all true or not, but I've heard rumors that for years and years and years. Right. And I know Admiral Byrd did go down there and did come back with his tail tucked between his legs.
Exactly.
And down there now, and they're doing all kinds of tests down there. And there's an old map that's been out for hundreds of years. And matter of fact, I believe Columbus may have run across it. It shows Antarctica drawn without ice.
The Reese Perry map. Yeah. And it's true. And I mean, it is so factual as to, which brings us into a whole different thing. Could they have alienated themselves within this ice to just take cover here on Earth? Is it from dimension? Is it something within the galaxy? There's much said on that, and the Galactica enforcement codes of alienations, so to speak. I'm rephrasing here just a little bit, but I think everybody gets it. I can't remember everything, but point I think comes across. But Yeah, it's mind blowing. What are they? And as you said, if you do look through the books, the one we cannot look through would be called the Book of Secrets. If that is even a true factual book that is hidden, and it was actually part of a movie, what, the Hidden Treasures with Nicolas
Yeah,
Cage.
yeah, yeah.
These
See, here again, in a movie, they got these things coming out.
yes, conditioning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. These, and I really do believe they are still looking for this lost treasure. Is this what Oak Island is about?
I don't
Because
know.
how many people spend the millions that they're spending now? I mean, it's got even. I mean, come on, these guys are giving up their lives in search, unless they know something more. And we know that there were presidents on that island as well, not just one, but two, who had their foot in the
Yeah,
door, and one had their foot on the ground there, digging himself, because the
yeah.
information of records, Masonic records, and more indicate there's something there. Is it religious? Is it treasure? Is it Templar? Is
I
it
think it's both, or
indigenous?
all the above.
Correct. It could be. It, you know,
And look
and
at Skinwalker Ranch.
oh, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, Wigginton. I watched a couple talks that he made, and they asked him how much is shown, in the movie or in the show, and he said 1% or less
Yeah.
of the it's ever shown. The rest of it lays on the cutting room floor. So you wonder, just what is going on. As a matter of fact, I've heard the other day that they called Mr. Fugel. They called him to the Pentagon to talk to him. So who knows what was said or what was, done.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned Pentagon, because if you go into the pre-election to Trump versus Hillary and Podesta and the narrative of what they were trying to push out, that they were going to do a form of disclosure. Well, hell, disclosure's already taken place in my mind. Too much has happened. We don't make documents and have to file for them under the Freedom of Information Act if they didn't occur. What the hell are they doing if it never happened? That's because it happened. Things have happened.
Wasn't Hillary supposed to find out some more information on UFOs and aliens and ETs and all that
right
stuff?
And she did the first disclosure of AUP, that we now have it called as a new phenomena. Unidentified aerial phenomena. Yeah, that topic comes into play. They were telling us straight out, and Obama, he came out, he made some brief discussions and comments that says that's what we're supposed to say, meaning don't talk about it. He didn't deny it, which was kind of like bizarre, but factual comment made out of his own mouth. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Facebook. If you go into groups and really deep dive and would just sit there and thumb up scroll on things, you'll definitely come upon it. Or go into America Disclosing Uncensored, one of my groups. I try to create a positive narrative of the information where people can fit pieces together, and I don't put them together. I try to I shouldn't do this. I really shouldn't, James, but even me, I don't, I'm trying to protect what I talk about, so we have some freedom of what's left in America for the people and for everyone who researches. So I jump the information, but everything is in there that I'm describing to you, and more and more. But again, it's one's open mind that has that type of mindset, that's willing to say, hey, I do believe we're on to something here. We need to keep going. And we do. Look at Stephen Greer. Look at Jimmy Church. And by the way, Jimmy, get out the guitar. And I love the new coffee pot, brother. I love the new, sorry, that's something between him and friends and so forth. He gets a new coffee pot. He opens it up on camera. He gets a new skull. These crystal skulls, that's another topic, but Jimmy's collecting them, and some of them are pretty fascinating and cool. And we know that people do this for many different reasons. I'm going to bring up something really quick. There's a place in Flagstaff, Arizona, that's going through, like, they're a crystal type business. That's what they specialize in. And one thing that they talk about in that particular area, now, I don't know if you want to call it a paranormal vortex or a ley line or something of energy, but the complaints of shadow figures and things and the numbers. I mean, how is this all happening? It's mind blowing, but this is facts and parts of everything, pieces of the puzzle into this mystery of the unknown because it's so deep.
Yeah, there's a valley there that's just outside the city that is known for its UFO activity and paranormal stuff.
Right, right, and
It
it seems that, you know, there are not, I don't want to say isolated, but there are areas where activities are more isolated but more prominent, where reports come in, and again we go back into the reports and the years, the facts, Project Blue Book, and the fact why it was shut down, but it really wasn't shut down. They just changed the name, and why they create narratives such as outside affiliations to make determinations what's best for the people when it comes to information, because we might not know how to deal with it. We might go into total chaos. I think.
Yeah, why did they take the series off?
Well, I heard that they were having technical problems, but I don't know.
It seems kind of hard to believe the technical problem in today's society.
I understand your position.
We have.
Yeah, I understand your position. But let's swing back to Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, there's people down there that are more educated than any of us will ever be in our lifetime, analyzing these situations. And look at the fella, Rob Bigelow, who owned it, investigated it through military industrial complex, his own money and more. And when asked a question, and I know I've said this before, people, please don't, judge me for it, but it's an important factor. When asked, how far do we have to travel out of our universe to find life? And he says, you don't have to go anywhere. It's right here with us.
Go anywhere. Yeah.
You're looking home. They want you to focus upstairs. That's why they're blanketing the sky, because they're shutting that part off too for you. But nevertheless, yeah. And if you watch Skinwalker, there's been enough, even at the 1%, to say that the information is so overwhelming. And don't forget, this gentleman, this person of science who stands out, and sometimes his name is not good to say from what I've been understanding, because his objective is not against science. It's for science, but some ethics of other divisional departments, secretive departments within the military that are above top secret more, which even Bob O'Dean talked about in Project Shock. He said when he read that book, when he learned that book, it changed his whole life, because he went into a narrative of the description of everything we're talking about. The only indifference was factual history of the United States of ufology and races. And it had races, it had occurrences. And he said it was just mind blowing until he laid upon his own natural time. He shared it to the American people. Now, this was a guy in the military that had more significance of his title than anyone else ever had. So we were hearing this. I mean, to me, it's like getting the information from the President of the United States himself.
Well, they probably keep a lot of them in the dark.
Some, I would have to say.
No basis.
Well, in some cases, but Project Shock seemed to be something where you were handed information and you had to learn it, understand it, and then you were put in a place where you had to deal with it.
Yeah.
Look,
was like Reagan.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about, in front of the United Nations. He talked about what if.
The big what if. You're right.
Yeah. What if we got attacked? Would Russia help us? And then Russia turned around and said, "What if we're attacked? Will you help us?" And yeah.
Well, you know what it is when you're dealing with something that's outsourced, that outsizes you, outdoes you in technology. You have to address more than one issue here. And Reagan stood there and addressed all nations of the world. What do? Well, it seems we know what they did. In ways we can speculate to everything that has occurred, maybe even as of the last 24 months. I'm trying not to get into that part, but does it not narrate back to something different? Because globally, humanity is beautiful. People of all cultures are beautiful. There's fascinating things about people when they're good. There's good and bad. We have
There's
these.
a lot of good people in the world.
They're true.
Every race.
There truly are. There truly are. But again, I don't like to go there. But doesn't it seem to go down that rabbit trail?
Yeah.
Don't the nut and bolts come together there?
I think so. Yeah.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And again, if anybody just joining in, this is Studio 10 o'clock Talks. I'm with James Wigginton. Fascinating person, intelligent researcher, hobbyist, loyalist to the people, to share and discuss the words of different types of mysteries such as Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. So look for all of his presentations when he has time to be able to share some of his words on the many platforms that are going to be looking for him after this, and all the ones that he came from. And special thanks to B Moss for the connection. I do appreciate it. Tina, we love you, girl. Thank you so much. But all right, so getting back, where do you want to go from here?
Adele. Don't forget poor Adele.
Adele. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
She had her own dog man sighting not too long ago.
Oh really? I don't know if I heard that. I mean, you know what? I do.
Yeah.
I do a lot. So please catch me up here. What can you tell us about that?
She was telling me about it over the phone, and she was saying that there's this area just not too far from where she lives, and she was just out there walking around in Mother Nature, and there was a dog man there, and she said that its legs. Now this gets into another movie here, a science fiction movie, Charlie Sheen. I can't remember the name of it, but they come down, UFOs, and they're heating the world up to make it more livable for them and all this good stuff. But anyway, it shows a picture at the very end where this young alien, he turns from human into kind of a alien, but his legs do not fold like when you fold your knees.
Right.
Your feet go backwards. They do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And Odell was telling me that the dog person she saw, its legs did that too. And then B was saying that in one of her encounters with her dog man, that it mind spoke to her.
I've been on the phone for hours with that young lady. I can't recall that part of the mind speak. Oh, well, that's fascinating stuff.
Well, I asked her. I just point blank asked her, but something that she said. I caught it and remembered it. And then when I was talking to her, I asked her, I said, now, you said that thing was several hundred foot away. And I know you couldn't hear it talk. Well, how did it communicate? She said, it mind spoke to me. She said, oh, it's you. Something like that.
Oh,
Evidently,
really?
this thing had seen her over the years and knew her. She grew up in that house with her parents, and I thought that was interesting because getting into the Bigfoot thing, there's another guy here in the state I live in. He lives a few counties over, but we were talking one time 6 months ago or so, and I got his name from Sharon Day, who lives in Arizona. And anyway, we were talking about why some people see Bigfoot, and some people have seen Bigfoot 5 times. Some people who had never seen him and been out in the woods for 20 plus years looking for him and never see him. And we both came to the conclusion that it's maybe a mental attitude that you have. And, I've had these deer hunters tell me, well, I've been out in the woods for 40 years. I've never seen one. And you're carrying a high-powered rifle, and they know why you're out there in the woods. I'd hide too.
Yeah, I get where you're at with that. I think this is where we come between that fine line where people are on the fence because subject matter on both sides of the fence there, and it is. And some would say, and I'm not debating you, by the way, James. I'm just, for the record, the best I can state to why I think people create this analogy of it's only myth, it's legend, it's a story. But the truth is, we know where people in numerous numbers are seeing things. It's most of them that see it are not carrying a weapon.
Yeah. When I had my encounter, I was carrying a pistol, but I'm not for sure they know what a pistol is. You know what I mean? When it's in a holster next to your body. I wasn't carrying a rifle, or wasn't carrying a shotgun. I was just out in the woods, look at a creek.
Right.
And
right.
The first time I was there, I found 2 sets of footprints where the creek merges into another creek. And one was 17 inches long, the other was 7 5/8 inches long. I mean,
and that's not even big when you look at Shaq. He's got size 22-inch feet. So this is a young buck at that number.
Yeah. Maybe Shaq's a Bigfoot.
He could be. He's big.
He's a big guy.
And I tell you what, though, I want to say this. Give him a shout out. He's been very kind, and to many people of many cultures, a supporter to law enforcement. And I just want to say that to everybody out there. But no, so here you have a man that we idolize, and right now, what it was, the big March Madness and all that stuff, a guy that fitted into that whole program and went further. But he has 22-inch size feet. And I think, actually, to tell you the truth, I think he once upon a time, if I'm not mistaken, because I've been in a couple of places, he gave Sammy Hagar, or as a joke, he left the tennis shoe behind. Sammy's like, what am I going to do with this? And then someone stole the tennis shoe. They think it was Eddie that took the tennis shoe. It became a joke. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. This really happened. This is a real story. And I mean, believe me, if I could get him on here to talk about it, and the fact of his nose, there's something about his nose, and he doesn't say much about it, but there is something about him and his nose that let's just say he's very sensitive in a way. And he's actually even more than that. I think he's quite intuitive. He discussed in a fact of opinion. This is going off base, but I'll just do it real quick because I thought it was fascinating. He's lying in bed. He had a father that they didn't have a real closeness. Dad liked to drink, but he was the rough guy in the bar. Everybody knew him. Oh, man, blah, 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 kind of stuff. He gets a mad knock at the door. Mid-morning or something, it's still dark. And he's like, oh, geez, who the hell could be knocking on the door at this time, day, at night? He goes to the door, he opens it up, and it's his father. And he's like, Dad, what are you doing here? And he's one of the things about the fact of why I'm bringing up the nose and the thing, he had a couple encounters of his life that were really strange that I was able to collect that on and so forth. But, he knew it was his father. He smelt them. His dad had a certain smell. He was very specific to smells in all of his stories. So he has a heightened sense of something that does that for him. And he says, Dad, his dad wanted to come. He says, Dad, no, not now. You're not in a place to come in. The family's sleeping. We're all in bed. No, just, go lay down, go, check in to a hotel. It's kind of something like that. Talks him into leaving. Goes, lays in bed, just falls back asleep. The phone rings. It's his sister. And his sister says, I got news. And he says, what's up, man? It's late. It can't be good. And she says, Dad died. And he was mind blown because Dad was just at his door 15, 20 minutes before it in a different place, in a different time, and had no way to get there. It could have never happened. And that was just one of his stories. If I would have just let him in, what would he have said to me? It's one of those factors. And again, I apologize for bringing it up, but it is one of his stories. Then there's one with the manager. When it was all falling apart, David Lee Roth and the big rockabilly, let's change the front man thing, bad vibes, etc. So it goes in deeper over management and things like that. Maybe you and I can share another time. I want to get you back to your story, but I hope you find a little bit of interest in it because Sammy has some really serious, I think he has a little bit of something going on in him that he may just need to admit it a little bit more, He's a quite fascinating person, way beyond music.
Well, you know, you hear these stories of things like this happening all the time. And
You do.
There's no way in God's green earth that person could have got to that other person because he's dead. You know what I mean? And, you know.
There's nothing between space and time. It's thought.
Yeah, there's more than what goes on than what we will probably ever know, even if we live to be another 10,000 years in the future, you know. But,
right. Where we could actually sit and explain it to each other as human beings. We need to have that other facet of life somehow to, I guess, to understand it. Maybe that's why, if there is this big rotating scenario where you have to come back to relearn till you get it right, if that theory is, well, part of that, yeah. I mean, there's other terminologies for it, but we'll just direct it at that as reincarnating. You know, what is it all? How does it all work? What does it all mean? Well, honestly, everybody, if you're listening around 6:30, I have another show. I'm coming on with a very beautiful person. Maybe she'll help us travel through sorting some of that out. Her name is Agatha Fuller, and she's a beautiful person, a seer, part psychic, but of a good way, health healer and self-conscious, teaches you positivity and different things. But she's fascinating, and I try to hit these platforms because how else do you get answers if you don't research them yourself and bring people with different mindsets into a show that can maybe make the whole difference?
Exactly. No one can think of everything.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible. And like you say, the fascination of everything is what we teach each other, no matter what it's about.
Yeah, one thing I want to bring, two things I want to bring back on the Project High Jump.
Oh, please do.
The U-boats was, their numbers were U-530 and U-977. And one thing that gets into Eisenhower when he was president, you know, the Grenada Treaty?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know exactly, yeah.
Well, yeah.
That was the fight back.
He was given a little cube, and it was called, it was for looking into the future and past.
Yes.
Yeah. And from what I understand, there's you can look it up on the internet. It's called Project Looking Glass.
You hear that, everybody? Project Looking Glass. If it's never came up before throughout the different conversations and platforms. And it is very, very interesting. It's up to you to believe or not, but it's worth looking into. All right, please continue, James.
Yeah, well, the way I understand it, you know, with Hillary wanting to become president and against Trump and all that good stuff, they put Trump in there because I think they were afraid of Hillary. Whoever can do this stuff, you know what I mean?
I'm on board with you more than you think. There, as some of the subject matters, they wanted her for 8, and then bring in Michelle for the finalization.
Yeah, and then also I've heard that that's one reason Trump had it so bad at the end there, instead of getting reelected and all that, is some of his things he wanted to do, and was to take Project Looking Glass away from whoever has it now. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just what I've heard. It's food for thought, we'll put it that way.
Right. And he even made comments about certain things. He didn't deep dive on any particular project or part of any information, but he was asked some questions, and enough was said when he said it's fascinating beyond belief in a way.
He wasn't a politician.
No, but I think he learned a whole different narrative of what politics truly stands for now, and I'm sure there's a better grasp within his mindset of how these narratives work. But hey, look, the big LT, Jack Massey reversed all the deleted informational thing. Look what's going on. If you look into that now, again, we're not going to deep dive here, but just make quick mention. The Kraken may have just been loose, and that's the truth, because things are happening on a positive note, and they're going to be devastating once all the leaks come out and through and they have started tumbling. So we can only stand by and stay ready and alert to what may come, and a lot more will happen. And when you brought up a big thing there, because we know that it proves the collusion and Russia, and all the other theories. If this was all information on this kid's play toy, if you want to call it. And again, look at it with caution. If you come across any and all of the information, it's quite disturbing in many ways. It truly is.
Yeah, the bad thing about it is on all this Russian collusion stuff, how much money was spent on that? Taxpayers' dollars.
Right, and you see they only fined Hillary $105,000 now that they know the truth. She got fined.
Yeah, that's pocket change.
That's not even pocket. That's, that's just a little piece of the money she stole from Haiti when that issue. Oh, we're going to help Haiti. We're going to do a GoFundMe. We're going to handle the money. Yeah. We're going to build them all new homes. 6 homes got built out of what, $48 million? I mean, how does that?
Expensive houses, aren't they?
Well, the money had to feed a lot of hands before what was left over could be applied. Everybody wanted a part of the kitty. I don't know how far or what she got from it. We can speculate those things, but this is I'm not going to call it the C word. I'm going to call it the D word. Disruption of narrative of mind vaccination. And that's why we try to narrate everything through we do. But on a higher note, do you think we're getting anywhere in the disclosure? As I said, I think disclosure has already been made.
Slowly.
Do you think it's already been made, though, in many ways?
In a roundabout way, they haven't come out and pounded their chest and say, hey, yeah, but with the Tic Tac video and a few other things, even the Catholic Church has released some of their information. The sad thing about it is there's countries out there that are open, a lot of South American countries and so on and so forth. They ask the people to report things so they can get a better grasp on it. I think the United States needs to be more open and release some of this stuff, because what's going to happen when it does hit the fan, people are going to say, how can we trust you when you've lied to us all these years? Now, they're going to come up with, well, we didn't want to destroy religion. We didn't want anybody to be scared and all that. I read some statistics the other day, true or not, I don't know, but they say half the population believes in them. And if you look at the universe and how vast it is, they found a new galaxy the other day that's 16.5 million light years long. Now, that's a distance light travels in 1 year. I'll let you all do the math on it.
Yeah.
And you're going to need a lot of pieces of paper, I'll put it that way.
Well, and wormhole technology, if it's true, and I would have to say that there's been too much talk around it for it not to have something to do with something of what we're discussing.
I don't see any reason why not.
It's kind of like in thought you're there. And that's what they talk about the craft's abilities as well, that they are part, technology like us that works with us of artificial intelligence. And once it identifies with you, it creates its field. It allows you to be in what's called free space and matter, not space, time and matter, or space time. And that way it has the ability to do all these functions that don't make sense to us. Now, when you get something that goes, Mach 20, it takes you an entire state to make a left turn. We don't understand this, where they do it on a dime. On a dime, they 90-degree angle. On a dime, and it happens, and everyone in is safe. I don't know what all the technologies are, which is another fascinating part. How wrong was Bob Lazar and Element 115? They're talking about it now and I'm glad he came out when he did. And a lot of people were skeptical, even a friend of mine, and I'm a friend, Stanton Friedman, said, I can't believe it. The story's too big. That's that cognitive dissonance where sometimes the story's so big, you have to look at the illogical part, even if it's a lie, and say, I got to go with that because it just fits better. because the truth's too
Well,
big to be. Go ahead.
Remember I was telling you about watching science fiction movies?
Mm-hmm.
There's a propulsion system that they have now set mathematically to work, and they probably have it with a TR3B, 3-4 plus,
Right.
3, 4, and 5, is Miguel Alcubierre. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. But he was a Mexican astrophysicist, and he watched an episode on Star Trek where they did the warp drive. Give me warp 5, Scotty, and all that, And you got thinking about it, and he thought, why not? So he did the mathematics on it. It can be done.
I have a little awareness to what you're talking about, but I don't have anything else in my mind outside of like what you're describing to me. I don't have or have not seen any papers, nor could I say I would understand any of the mathematics. I mean, is it above quantum that we these? I mean, how far does it go? Like, how many zeros equals
quantum physics? It's they've got another physics out. I can't think of the name of it. It's beyond quantum physics, and he's Oriental. He's probably American, but he looks Oriental, and he's got white, somewhat long hair. And he even talks about it on one of his talks about how.
Oh yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. He's subjective to everything, but he analyzes well. He does.
Yeah. And he's going to understand it far better than you or I ever would. At least me, anyway. You might, but he says, you put energy bubble around the ship, and you make one end larger than the other, and it cancels out Einstein's theory on relativity. Can't go beyond the speed of light. And what you do is you're not in this universe. You're really in a bubble, like they're talking about on warp drive.
Yeah, and in between dimensions.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And what was it? Ben Rich. He retired from Stoneworks. And when he retired, he made the statement somewhat like, we now have the technology to take E.T. home.
Right.
So, if they can do that, then they've got to have some method of doing it.
And I truly believe he's only saying it now because it's something of old technology. They're just perfecting it more and more. They've made it happen. Yeah. They're using it. Yeah. But they're also gaining momentum on how to make it better and safer for whatever reasons. You don't say or make comments like that to disrupt the humanity. You have to, and I would think people of positions like this and intellect are smart enough to just lay it on the line. In truth, he did it, and I think the people accepted it very well because we're using that information now to help us analyze everything else we're looking at. So when you put all these pieces, I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and I think when these people get some age on them, they realize that they're not going to be around a whole lot longer, and they might as well. You've heard a lot of ex-military talk about things like this.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to go to the place in the sky, and they say, I haven't got nothing to lose. And that's when they talk about some of their things they talk about.
Exactly.
They're, more open-minded about it.
Exactly. And sometimes I wonder about this missing 411, the millions of people. It's not, we're not talking about 100,000. We're talking enormous numbers. Is this for off-planeting resources? Being told what the possibility is, it's for mankind. Accept the fact that we chose you. You're going somewhere. This is what's happening. They take people of all ages. They create a community elsewhere to start civilization elsewhere in the event of what? Then we get into theories like Planet X, the return of the fact that once upon a time it was here, according to the books that elaborate in certain ways. And I think the Colburn Bible even makes mention in some ways that it will come back. It will disrupt Earth again. We will tilt further on the axis. We went from a 360-day year to a 365 and a quarter day year. The last time it was here, went through devastational issues. And maybe in ways, some of the preparations of what we're seeing of hypothetical thought, maybe there's some narrations around all that. Keeping the planet warmer, as you suggested, is part of what this 5G system and these nanotechnologies that they're spraying in the skies, it truly to deflect the sun's energy from, and we need to do it to save Earth and the ice cap melt. I don't know if that's the scenario. Maybe they're focusing on preparing this Earth for something that needs a different type of Earth, a different type of format for one's existence to be better. It's pretty far out there, pretty far fetched, and I'm going to be doing a show on that too. It's called Into Our Future. And I'm going to be doing it with Richard Scott. That's coming up. You might want to join us on that, because I think you would fit the bill in there perfectly, because you have all these different aspects of thought and theory. And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of it is being able to pull everything out the best way we can to try to analyze it.
Everybody's opinion on it. Yeah.
Right. Because
someone might think of something we can't.
Exactly.
Or forgotten.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We got to keep.
You talked about Bigfoot. I will say this: they are real. They're there, and they're closer than you think. And I think there's more of them than what people realize. Now, what they are, I have no idea. I know they're big. That's all.
Yeah, and I don't think they're half as big as what some people think. I said that wrong. I think they're bigger than what people think they truly are. There's just something about it. If humans and stories like the military story that came out, the giant military thing that happened several years back, 20 years back or so.
Oh, you mean in Afghanistan or wherever it was?
Right, the giant issue that occurred. We talked about it the other night. Kandahar. I had to look for it in my mind. I had to do some research in my own brain file. But yeah, this was 12 foot tall, and they had to take half its skull off for it to drop. And it caused a lot of devastation to, our armed forces, the groups in the armed forces that who were researching out and investigating the areas who went missing. And then you get a search party that goes out and has to deal with a find like that. And that's just, but again, when you look into it, is 12 foot appropriate for them? I don't even know if that's factual. They may be even bigger. Who knows? And then some people say, well, they're part Neanderthal and they're part ape. Maybe they are. But it doesn't mean that they have not evolved. And then you have to look at some of this things like this. Why would the government have opened up 6752 on it? It's a program that was investigating all this stuff. They don't do it because
there's always been skeletons or records of skeletons showing up and stuff. And I had a guy in eastern Kentucky I was talking to one time, and matter of fact, I wish the bunch from Expedition Bigfoot had ever returned an email. But anyway, I was talking to him, and he called it a watcher. It watches the juveniles. There's two of them in particular. And he was talking about this one being 11 foot tall. And I said, okay, I know you didn't go out with a tape measure and measure it. How in the world do you know it's 11 foot tall? You just guessing or what? He said, no, the eaves of my house are 9 foot. And he said this thing was 2 foot taller than the eaves of my house. I said, okay.
That's it. Yeah. And see, these are parts of the information that may be the most important parts of the information. When you hear a comment made like that because we asked a question, I don't even know what it would be like to encounter something of that size. But I can't say that they're here totally for harm, because
no, they're not.
If that was the case, every person to come back to report on it would have had a different type of experience.
there would be news reports left and right. I mean, it'd be on the national news and stuff. Now, I think they can if they wanted to, but I think you have to really, like, hurt one's young like a bear.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's nobody worse than a mama bear, and they live too close to us, and there's too many of them for them to want any harm. It's just like people, and I think the military is going to come out in the next few years to be able to increase their allotment, is they're going to say, well, the UFOs are going to invade us and all that. Shoot far, if they wanted to invade us, it would be about like a 5-minute war. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if they wanted to do that, they would have done it a long time ago.
Well, there are false flag events that are predicted. Stephen Greer, who used to actually brief the presidents of the United States, we know that that's factual. And it's not because he brings it up all the time. He does. And I admire his efforts and the position that he was able to put himself in, because he did his due diligence. He was with leakers, whistleblowers, and more. And you do know now that we do have a whistleblower protection plan for military. If you don't, it pertains to this is one of the key elements why this was created, to protect, because deathbed confessions were the biggest form of resource, with the exception of Lieutenant Colonel Corsico. Do you remember Corsico? He wrote the books. Had a beautiful. Wasn't he
supposed to be mentally capable of communicating with them?
It's been. I think you're talking about Clifford Stone.
I thought it was
Cord was the one that took all the reverse engineered products to all the big. The best in the world, Westinghouse and more with all the thing like
reverse engineer.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's in all his books. He did lectures, and he was surrounded by a very beautiful lady who brought a lot to the forefront, who he shared most of his information to, and continues till today, doing ufology and more. He got her into this thing. And she's brilliant, beyond doubt, just like Linda Moulton Howe. We're talking about someone who's award-winning, that these are people coming to bat that have some of the highest credentials you could ask for. But I know that the story is so big. It's that cognitive dissonance where it's almost too big to accept. I don't fall in the siege. I don't fall in that area. I fall in the area of truth and one's truth to the people. And when I listen for tones and voices, I look into their work. Linda investigates everybody to make sure she dots her I's and crosses her T's before she ever lets a voice to come to her platform. And that's the truth. And if you step on her feet, she will embarrass you. She will make you look terrible. She's just as powerful one way as she is the other way. Ask David Wilcox. He overstepped boundaries with her once, and he went MIA to almost the whole community. But yeah, getting back to Corey Goode, have you heard much on a lot of his story as well?
No, I haven't. Can't say that I have.
It's pretty big. It's pretty large. It could be for a whole nighttime event. I don't even think, to be quite honest, I think in ways the ufology community, whether it was Richard Dolan or some of these other masters of the art of information, and they are masters of the art, man. They're, and they just, you got to have a name to be in this clique. We're small potatoes. There's some larger ones out there, though, that are hospitable enough to us to give us respect, talk to us in the community, try to help the torch start to be passed to the younger generation coming up forth within the community of it. But you can't take the people's work away from them. They work diligently to get this information out. No different than Chariots of the God, Eric Von Daniken. I mean, come on. He put things into...
picking on him.
Oh, of course. I know. And they'll do it forever. But I think there's many proofs in his science. And he's no scientist. But there's many proofs in how he made his determinations. And not because it made him famous or rich, and it did both for him, but it's because things like this happen because people are willful. we have a different mindset of, and we all have, I guess, this interest, and it's part of who we are. It's our intuitiveness, like where we have to reach into it, because the more information that comes to us, the more intrigued we become with it. Bigfoot, Dogman, UFOs, hauntings, mysteries, dimensions, skinwalkers, the Rougarou, it doesn't, Yeti, the Alabama white thing, Turtle Man, it doesn't matter. It's there are things out there. And then you have to look, you can get into a whole different narrative of topic of military industrial complexes and the agenda to recreate dinosaurs and all these different things. And in some ways, histories of where people said, I don't remember all the names specifically. I have a lot of them in my head, but I'll just be specific, like dogman, but a true dogman, a physical man's body with a dog's head, or is it just a symbol of, the big O? You got to look at all these topics, and then you have to look, which is the really scary part of the line. You can look through history, and bestiality was not out of the question. The word comes from old content where people were trying things to create things on their own because they felt they would be closer to the gods in certain ways. And I know people would tear me down for saying it, but they tear me down for also having the objective of what really happened with the Great Flood, biblical flood. I'm not saying it didn't rain for 40 days. God, we recreated that in the Vietnam War, and President Kennedy said we were already working on it before his demise to this greater power of a government. And we know that these people can be terrifying. And not everybody commits suicide, mind you, but that's a pretty, that's a topic of a different scenario, but these things happen. So when you get into all these things and narratives, people, it's like the recreation of biblical times they want to have. Again, so I hope you do keep a very open mind to possibly joining us more when we go into that into the future topic, Planet Exit more, because we do know, and even someone even just as fascinating, you'll know the name. Let me think of it. I see his face in my head, and I'm going through the dictionary log. Lear. I mean, Roger. So Lear, he flew all these special planes and did all these things.
Wasn't his father the inventor of the Lear jet?
Correct. You can't take anything out of context from him either. I mean, he's the one that brought Bob Lazar into the picture, as well, put some of the best journalists into the world on the matter of it, and made reports and did special documentaries and now movies. We're moving into a future of disclosure of a different sort, and it's going to break down history and time. And then if you get into Bill Tompkinson, this was a fellow who worked on models, who was like handpicked to run and work with the aliens from his own mouth. And this came out on Project Camelot, and I think a 2 or 3 segment that she did with him, where he even described the Battle of California, that he witnessed it from his home and watched that occur. The eyewitness.
Yeah, they shot 1,400 something rounds off.
Oh, don't hold me to it, but I'm going to agree with you and say, yeah, we're in the neighborhood, and that's probably sort of correct.
Yeah, and never hit anything that they know of.
Exactly.
Doesn't that come on in the same area that Catalina Island?
Close offshore, yes, where a lot of the underwater submersibles have been seen going in and out. But you can't take this out of context either. We had generals who became presidents who also witnessed this on destroyer ships when they were out of them, firsthand witnessed it. So why were these people to see Holloman Air Force Base? What was that whole treaty about? Again, does it reflect what we're dealing with 411? And then you have Eisenhower's great granddaughter, who is out there now. She has a different emphasis on her direction, but openly talks about matter subject of what we're talking about in ways, and tries to enlighten people. These things went on. Her name's Laura Eisenhower, by the way, in case anybody doesn't know her. Beautiful person. She's a lot like my next guest, who's going to be on at 6:30 this evening. She's enlightenment. She's spiritual. She looks into everything, but she also comes from
What's her name?
Laura Eisenhower.
No. Your guest on tonight.
Oh, Agatha Fuller. She has a group on Facebook, just one of her places. She has 250,000 people, members. She's one of the biggest groups that ever hit Facebook. When it comes to spiritual wisdoms, health, well-being, who we are, who we were, what pyramids really do, the technologies behind them, time travel within them. Look, there's different formats of pyramids, and they all had a different. She taught me some of this, to be perfectly honest with you. I knew about some of it, but her context and words were just really enlightening as to how we should perceive them. When people say that there's scientific energies and mathematical equations that equal things of Earth in many ways, without a doubt, were they power structures to do something that allowed people to grow taller, or was that all part of the giants, or were they able to control and defy gravity somewhat to make it more livable on this planet for the visitors who came, with all the references of the books that we do know about and that we do talk about, the Nephilim, and there's a culture of that too. It's not one word. There's like 8 or 9 sectors of giants that we know about, including the one eye. So you have the double rows of teeth, you have the 6 fingers. So when you get into all these narratives and that, it's just so huge. It's so huge. History taught us nothing in high schools, and it taught us nothing in grade school educations as well. It even lied to us about the geography of our own maps. And we know that there's proof to that because the Vatican itself ordered the United States to look like the biggest, strongest empire. And that's probably why they made sure they placed the 10-mile square straight and sent over a statue of representation from another country to make it look like a representative gift, just like a pentacle that stands in the center of it all, of a 10-mile radius, shaped as a key with a 3-star flag. I mean, do you know? I mean, I might talk too much shit. I should be careful here. Listen, man, there's so much in my head. I sometimes I think it could explode.
There's been several shows on TV about the T shape.
Yeah.
So it's getting out there, but I think a lot of people see this or listening to it, and then they file it away and go back to their lives. Squeaking by with gas and food prices as high as they are.
Yeah.
They have all the good intentions in the world of learning something, but then how do you go about the process of it, so to speak? And most people just, shove it away, put it on the back shelf or something.
You're right. So how do we keep them alert and with us? I don't know. It's hard.
Keep talking about it.
And that's all we can do. That's all we can do.
That's all you can do.
And, we're not going to deep dive every point right here today in this short period of time that we're sharing. And we're not going to be able to do it because I could bring so much so hard that it reflects so much in many ways. And I'm sure you could do it too. We'll just have to plan to do more.
Over their heads, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure some of the things that we've already just shared out to some people may be a little hard for them to accept. But listen, I'm all with you, and I do understand that. But all I can say is if you keep an open mind, your consciousness will open up a different format of energy and universal knowledge to you. And that's a fact. That's a fact. It's only going to give you what you're willing to accept.
And all these groups need to share info, just like your person on tonight. If she's a psychic, then she has things that will come to her like a fog, so to speak, or like the wind blows it in, it just comes to her.
Exactly.
And, she can tell you some things, good, bad, or indifferent,
Right.
And, of course, she may not want to think of all of them.
The truth of the matter is, though, is having a little bit of guidance on trying to weigh the analogies of this division of where everybody is, because we're all lost within it. How to stay lighter, how to stay, have a more beautiful smile, etc., etc., etc. When you allow yourself to open yourself, and I think it's always worth to bring somebody on here that has a great ideology of information. And this young lady, I even asked her, she said to me, I knew it before I was born. And I've talked to a lot of people. I have. And I never heard that comment before. And, I was blown off my chair in that moment. I really was. I was like, I wanted to jump up and down and say, "You're kidding me, man!" You're just like, because, but there are people out there that are more special and gifted for whatever reasons they are. Um, we don't understand. It's like a 6-year-old that gets up and plays blues with B, with BB King and went note to note with him. How does that happen? Is it part of a reality we don't understand? And when you listen to children in that reality, and when they explain things of past life memories, we have blank spaces everywhere. And what we need to do, in many ways, as we go through the future, is to try to figure out how we create a balance where information we can accept it as a positivity instead of all being negative, and try to emphasize on the nature of how it gives us strength. When it's, and again, I don't want to get into this too harsh because I'll probably say it wrong. And if she's listening right now, if you are, hello, Agatha. I love you. But no, the truth of the matter, the truth of the matter is she has better words than I do for this. She's much more qualified. It's things that she studied and she's traveled. She's been to the pyramids. She understands things. She's knows people that did documentaries, that producers and line producers and directors and filmmakers. And she brings a lot to the bat on information. And you've been talking about that today. Why are they showing us movies, and why are they showing us clues in them, and why are we seeing this, and what about Spielberg? And there were, in certain movies as well, actual military audio video of certain occurrences allowed fed into certain movies that were handed over to people. So the deeper the dive,
enlightening us on a slow basis.
Yeah, but you know what? How slow do we go? I'm going to ask that question tonight because of the negativity needs to be defeated by the positivity on so many levels. I'm hoping that she can give some really good guidance, because then again, it could help us even on how we analyze in discussions the things that we talk about to put us into a different placement of universal knowledges versus the facts of things that we share to people, so that we're doing it properly too. Because the last thing I would want to do is create animosity or a disruption in one's mind and theory or religion. I'm not for that in any way. But this whole oneness and understanding it, oneness. Then, if when you look into these faculties, which I'll get more into this evening, I'm sure here shortly, but that means in a way, and I could be wrong. The Big Bang Theory could be part of the spectacle of universal development. So, in a way, is this oneness a god of science, or did we just misinterpret the whole picture? So I'm lost even in this. So if I'm not making any sense, it's because I'm still lost in it, and I need to deep dive as far as I can with this young lady. She's amazing. Well, You'll like her, I guarantee you.
You may know the name of it, but there was a report done, years ago, like 40, 50 years ago. And it told the military that, and the powers to be, that people, if aliens were to land right now, the world couldn't comprehend it. Religion would go apart, and economics would fall, and so on and so forth. And I think this report was taken about halfway wrong. In other words, I think the information they got was half of it was wrong. And I think what people know now, in comparison to what we knew 40, 50 years ago, or 70 or whatever, is completely completely different. And like you said, I think we're learning slowly, but is it fast enough or is it too slow? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, and I know I know the report you're talking about. I'm trying to. It's in my head. You have one of those thoughts where it's on the tip of your tongue? I talked about it earlier. This was,
and when you get to talk or walk away from somebody, then you remember his name.
Of
You've known him
course,
for 30 years.
Of course, of course, and that's. Yeah, but you know what? It comes with old age, I guess. I'll blame it on that. But this is part of exactly what had occurred on the show Project Blue Book. It was fitted into that narrative of this group that got together and decided they would shut it down. But as I stated earlier and had mentioned this, all they did was opened up another narrative of a different name. But the one thing that most fascinates me, who are the men in black? And I'm not talking about the black-eyed children, black-eyed adults. I'm talking about who are the men in black. I mean, that typical thing as well. Alienated-looking people, were they A1 technology? They were untalkative, but yet they could drive a car. They all drove in black cars, wore black suit and ties. They were very specific to things. They were very quiet to things. No one knew how to take them. People feared them just upon looks and their actions of communication from themselves to whoever they were addressing. That's pretty mind bizarre too. It's one of those places like the crop circles, but I really think the crop circles, we have more indications of what they are now. We have videos now that actually through Google Earth, they caught orbs doing it. So where did these orbs come? What controlled the orbs? Or were they remote controlled, small powered? And then look at Stephen Greer when they came across that little skeleton of an alien that was only like 8 inches tall, and they diagnosed it. It was brought forth from the guy in Mexico. He has a very huge ufology crowd. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I know who you're talking about. Raimi something or other.
Right. I mean, do you ever see that little alien type creature, elongated skull?
Yeah.
I mean,
I have.
This earth has had many different types of lives of visitors. And then you look at the whole earth as a work of art, which I brought up the other day as well. When you're up in the sky and you go over certain continents of this entirety of the world, the depictions of art and landing strips and giant stones and placements of things. Look, we're not alone, and something here happened. Something here happened many times, and that doesn't reflect upon the Lamar, was it Lamarians, Atlantis fading away and all that kind of stuff, and but people do reflect that these were parts of the technology, the smart people, the ones who manipulated DNA. To create a tribe of like super soldiers to build these mega structures, and there's another big question. They even had anti-earthquake designs built into them where if an earthquake occurred right under them, they had no movement to fall. And we're just finding that out. We're just finding that out now. Not only could you not put a paper thin razor between it, a dollar bill, or anything else in the design of how they were done. So were they heated and melted into place? Some people say that that's another theory too. I don't know. And then we had a fellow in California who was building mega structures on his own property and died with the secrets of how he was moving stones all by himself once the nighttime skies came. He worked in the darkness.
There was one in Florida too that did the same.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, but people know technologies. They steal technologies. They take it from us. They utilize it for government. Anything that's purposeful. And if you don't like it, they won't tolerate your ignorance. They'll make an example out of you. So it's kind of like take it and shut up, or, act like you never knew nothing about it and hand it over to us because it's for mankind. Everything becomes for who is mankind? Because politics controls our rights when they take from the people, of course. But again, what did these other forms of technologies really do for them? And again, what jumps into that whole hypothesis is, in a way, you could look at Tesla and his life and his accomplishments. And why did Donald J. Trump's uncle put his hands first into everything upon his demise, if in fact that was his day of demise, as we learned when he passed away? Most of his articles and all of his cases went missing, which I bring up a lot. But these are facts that need to be pushed out in strength so people understand and have a better awareness to the type of America that we are. So again, we're skeptical of who they are. They're out for themselves. Is it truly for mankind, or is it truly because narratives are deeper than that? And the necessity of information that they do come across, find out about, and can take over from people, including all patents, may have a future goodness inside them. I'll just put it that way. Better to have everything in case files so you have a plan of action if necessary. However, I think we're in a place where it's against the people. It's not it's not for protecting the people. It's against the people. It's just strange. It's just so strange. So what else you got, brother?
Well, we could always talk about NASA.
Oh, NASA, that's the big nut.
And I read a thing the other day where some reporter said, you know what NASA stands for? He says, never a straight answer.
Yeah. Well, leave it to people to come up with good, intelligent ways of analyzing something. Never a good answer. There you go. That works as positivity for me, brother. It really does.
If you ever study NASA and study Gus Grissom, now that is sad in itself, Mr. Grissom, the way they died. Mm-hmm. And when NASA started, it had Crowley and I can't think of the other guy's name.
The Germans? Are we talking about when
No. This was before they brought over the Germans.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, this article I read years ago said when they brought the Germans in, one was a stormtrooper and one was a Nazi, and he said they were the sanest one of the bunch. But Crowley was a card-carrying devil worshiper. And, what's the other guy's name?
Well, you know what he did, right? I mean, you do know about his testings in Al Parson. They got blamed for the breaking.
Yeah.
They got blamed for breaking the fabric that caused all the dimensional entrances.
Yeah, and matter of fact, there's even Jimmy Page that bought Crowley's old house.
Yeah,
he got into it, but and I want people to realize or read about Gus Grissom. And I wish they would. And
well, you know what? We're going to have to be informative for ones that may be too busy in life and whatnot. So we could deep dive on that sometime for sure in the future, without a doubt. Because when you get into the narrative of what you brought up and Scientology, why that all of a sudden started to exist, and why the Pope, Louis, who reigned from 1878 to I think 1903. Actually said religion is science. So they already had information. And why did they burn the libraries of Alexandria twice? And, why did they send the Templars in the first time to take and confiscate all the books of creation and so forth? It was a narrative of control, of course, but they were villains in their own way. They were villains in their own way, and a lot of that is showing their true colors of who they are, what they were, what they stood for. All this time is coming out. Thank God to that. But Parsons, and that story is really pretty fascinating. And like I said, military-industrial complex blamed them. They said that, of course, the narrative works only when it serves purpose. There was other speculations with all the testing of the hydrogen and the atomic and all that stuff that was part of the issue of the fabric. And then all the UFOs started to come in. Well, that's not exactly all true, but it may have opened up a dimensional door to other entities that now had that capability to come in and still do. But prior to that, I think we were more looking at what we had was a universal issue of visitors that were within our galaxy or able to, they had technologies able to transfer themselves into these areas of our space, I'll say. And probably just like out doing research, like what's out here, who's living here now. We were here 3,000 years ago. It's not like space and time means anything if you really reflect into ancient history of leaders, of kings, where 8 rulers lived 240,000 years. Well, how do you do that unless you're coming and going between space and time? I mean, Moses, yes, there's certain certainties written in books about growing to the age of 900 some years old, 970 years old, something like that.
Well,
And
look at Noah.
exactly.
I mean, if you believe in the ark, the Bible tells you exactly how long it is and how wide and so on and so forth. They talk about the cubits. And, back then, no skill saws or drills or anything else, electric drills. Can you imagine how long it must have taken to build this thing?
Oh, my God, yeah. I get where you're coming from. And preparations
So he had to be, quite old, like 900, 1,000 years old or whatever when he did pass.
And remember, this is, you're right, exactly. But when you weigh in, the pure bloodline that was on that boat to, again, flourish once again and make the world flip and recreation. I don't know the narrative of how that fits together because there's some huge gaps, no matter what some of these biblical scholars have talked about. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I appreciate them. I do. But I think the narrative's much bigger than, like you say, at points we take one bit of information as the proof of the information. And there is something deeper to it as well. That's why we got to take one passage from one particular book, whether it's from King James, and then you go into Enoch, and then you go into Job, and then you go into Daniel and the book of Jesus. And yet you got to search passages through every book, like putting exactly what we're doing, being taught to navigate, to put the puzzle together.
Yeah, because, just the book of Enoch. I've heard that it was Enoch that built the Great Pyramid of Giza. Who knows? But, the knowledge that was there, what they had, and the shame of it is we don't have it now. A certain few people may have it, but as for the vast majority of people, no. It's been covered up, burned, and hidden away.
Right. And what did the Sphinx face really show before they redepict? It was regroomed. There was something else there. And then you get into the geologists and so forth who test the stones and say they're much older than. I don't know how they actually determine all that, especially if stones are quarried and then placed. How do you get the testing 100% accurate? But then you have Göbekli Tepe and things of that nature, and the age and civilizations that go beyond 12,000 years old and more. And we're still finding things. And now you have that camera system that they use. I can't think of what it's not infrared. It shoots down, and they're finding that we've only covered maybe 2% in those sands in the east of what has only been discovered. We haven't touched anything of existence. No. And they don't want it touched.
I wish you talk about that. That's where I wish they had it. And they may have. We just don't know. We were talking about Oak Island a while ago.
Yeah.
They are a Skinwalker Ranch. I wish they would, and they may have. I wish they used a Landsat satellite imaging. It goes down at least 100 foot.
Right.
And I think they might be able to find out a lot more. And like the Bottleneck Hollow Lake, the government built that in, what was it, 1970s or so?
Yeah.
Maybe it was
Yeah.
And who's to say that there's not a entrance? And I'm gonna stick my neck out here. Maybe
Go ahead.
A UFO interest going into the lake, and then from the lake going out into a tunnel system.
Well, you brought up something really interesting that I'm going to share with you then. It is said by our military, it has been said, and I'm sticking out my neck here too, that certain parts within the bays of California, certain areas of Santa Monica and so forth, that there are entrances that a submarine can go in and travel all the way up to the Rocky Mountains.
I've heard that.
So, I mean, and then why the secretiveness about so many cities? Look at Phil Schneider and his incident, but beyond the incident of what he encountered and had that occurrence, he knew and talked about publicly before his mysterious death, just like Bill Cooper, who goes back. He's one of the ancient ones of voice in these matters and more of government, UFOs, and more, and the tie-ins with it. But said that we had over 190 different underground military complex systems that were city-sized. Whether
233.
Was it 233? Okay.
Now,
my apologies and thank
you. They tried to build 2 a year.
Yeah, I
wasn't going to bring it up.
No, that's
we were talking about the MIBs.
Yeah,
that ain't from the knock on my front door.
I knew it was high. Okay, and one thing I swear I had, but again, my notes aren't in front of me. I didn't know we were going here, but that's why you're on the other side. And thank you for my correction. I appreciate it. But the facts are facts. I mean, these are things people have talked about willfully. And like you said, in some cases, the information comes out, just months before one's life. And what about the mystery of, I can't think of his name again, but they threw him out the window,
Oh, yeah. The Majestic 12.
Yeah, Majestic 12 had a lot to do with it. You're right.
Yeah, he wanted to go public.
Yes. And that's kind of the same narrative of Admiral Berg. It was the same thing when he went on that public TV show. They cut the feed at the end because he was getting into it so deep. They actually cut him.
Yeah. Well, it's like Phil Schneider. I actually had the good fortune of talking to, this was several years ago, of talking to a guy that used to be on the same talk circuit as Phil. And I was talking to him face to face. I mean, I wasn't 3 foot away. And I just asked him, I said, now, is this stuff Phil's talking about, is it for real, or is he sugarcoating it, or is he just making this shit up, so to speak? And he said, no, he said, I don't know for fact, I wasn't there, but he said, I do believe what he's saying is true.
He encountered something down in that hole. I know that. I mean,
yeah,
there's been
2 years in the hospital, didn't he?
It was a long time. Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years. Lost 3 fingers.
Yeah.
And,
his whole midsection of his body was melted.
Yeah.
It just melted him. Whatever they used, whatever type of technology. Well, hey, maybe we can analyze this as the phaser.
Yeah.
Do you remember the phaser?
That sounds good.
The phaser worked. It seemed to be able to do the job for Spock and
or phaser or something, And who's to say they don't have something like that now?
Exactly. Well, you know what? There's a story that was shared on Conflict with Michael on Conflict Radio. Michael's a little rock star, man. I enjoy listening to him. But he had a guest on who they were kind of like buddying up together doing some shows, and he pointed out something. And he's real deep into archaeology and finds and discoveries, where he was talking about one temple that was discovered and found. They actually found a cell phone in it. So who the hell would go in, bury a cell phone in it, and now wait a minute. This was a shared story out there that got suppressed and was hidden. And here, how this makes perfect sense to me is what about the depictions when you go into some of these places that show airplanes, helicopters, ships,
Yeah, like
and
the pyramids
a cell phone?
on the wall. Yeah,
Yeah, and a cell phone.
yeah.
5,000-year-old cell phone. Well, I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but I think they're doing it by date and time of whose tomb it was. Of what the
On the 5,000 years.
yeah.
No, Hawassi. Someone he swears that it was built by Egyptians and it was built 5,000 years ago. But they found a where the blocks are angled upward to relieve the pressure.
Right.
There's a little chamber up there about 3 foot tall or 4 that someone wrote that date on there.
Oh, you're talking about the final room.
Yeah, and they wrote the guy Khufu is what they wrote.
Okay.
And it wasn't carved in granite; it was just written up there, with like ink or something. And that's where they get the idea, because what's a geologist's name that has a long hair that said the Sphinx has got to be at least 12,000 years old because of the erosion of water.
Right. Right.
And
the rains.
They're now saying that back 12,000 years ago, backward, it was a fertile ground. It wasn't desert. It was fertile.
Right. But again, we have to remember, we have to base some of the facts on, I think, the flood and the devastation from it. And in ways, I look at this theory. This isn't from a physicist. This is from me, Michael Anthony. And a lot of times I thought about this, like what could cause this devastation? What caused all these pyramids to be underwater, all these cities? And if a flood were to come, if the atmosphere could create that much pressure, and we're talking scientifically, not by a God's hand, that we would not understand a supernatural ability like that. But if we go by science, the possibility of it is impossible unless someone knew how to weatherize it. Could that have been early form of technology, and that's the reason it's coming back? Possibly. Which means then people were in disguise doing things. Everything that we know, whether it was, why don't you come with me, little girl, on my magic carpet ride, or the fact that it was a chariot with flames coming out of it. It wouldn't really matter. But my thought was this. What if the tectonic plates and the waters across the earth just, I forget what it's called, when they fault and break, they drop. But in some cases, because of underneath volcanoes, they can be pushed up as well. If they were pushed up, all the water pushed out, and it came and it threw the sands, it threw the water, and all these places, it covered the earth. And when it finally did recede, when everything finally then did settle, not everything was in eye's view any longer. Does it sound wrong? Does it sound like it's a possibility? I mean, it's my own thought, nobody else's. And I don't know if anybody.
Because if the polar caps melted, like the North Polar Cap, if it were to melt, just think of how much water would be released.
Well,
the water underneath the earth.
And I don't think that's a worry, because didn't Obama just buy a $20 million house on the water? He did, in fact.
He may have, I don't know.
So
I don't keep up with him.
And even Trump said the other day about that. The water's going to raise like a tenth of an inch, or so, such a small, minute amount. And then he dropped an F-bomb to it to Kerry, because Kerry's narrative is now to live on as Gore did, who failed in his narrative of what was supposed to happen, that never happened, that he made millions of dollars on. And it really was
Al Gore?
Al Gore and his $1 million theory.
The inventor of the internet?
Yeah. Al Gore and the $1 million failure theory. I mean, it's exactly what it's been. Hey, I don't know. I've enjoyed everything we talked about today. I really have, and I don't want to cut you loose, but I got to prep for the next one coming on. I hope you understand that. But I had a blast, dude. We need
to talk about wolf spirit too one day.
Well, if you got something short and you want to do it, I got that much time. You got something you?
Well, I had a cousin that had a family reunion a couple of years ago. Matter of fact, if I'd met her on the street, I wouldn't know she was a cousin. She's like third or fourth cousin or something. But anyway, we were talking, and I was telling her about my Bigfoot experience, and then she used to live in where was it, Montana, the northwestern part of Montana, and she showed me some pics on her cell phone. And why people do this, I don't know. There's a story I could tell you one day too about this guy over in county, a few counties over, that had an experience. But anyway, he was fussing at his wife because she wanted to take a picture of the deer in the backyard. And he said, deer come up to our yard all the time. And he was kind of frustrated because that's when they had a 35 millimeter camera. But my cousin out there, was her day off. She worked at the post office, and she went out in the country. And they were taking pictures of deer. And she was going from left to right, and showed me all these pictures of these deer. You know, you see one deer, you see them all, in my opinion. But anyway, she comes to this tree. It looked like the size of a full-grown dogwood tree, maybe 35 foot tall. And then she goes on to the right and takes more pictures of deer. Then she comes back, and the tree's not there. She said, no, wait a minute. Trees don't get up and walk. The tree has to be there because I've got the picture on my cell phone. So she enlarges it, and I saw it, and I enlarged it, and it wasn't a tree. It's what the Indians call wolf spirit. It's hard to explain. I don't know that I can, but it looks like leaves are connecting it for 5 different pictures of animals. The head was an eagle, then it had a wolf in it, it had a bear in it, and another 2 animals, the face of them. And you could actually see the face. You could recognize it anywhere, the faces of it. But yet, connecting it, it looked like maybe like leaves or something. And she showed it to one of her customers came into the post office, and she was asking him about it. He happened to be Indian. And he said, well, can I see it? And she showed it to him, and he got all excited. And he said, my dad is a shaman, and I would love for him to come back and see it and talk to you. And she said, okay, I'll be here. Well, anyway, make a long story short, he goes back to the reservation and brings his dad back, and his dad looked at it, and he said, do you have Indian descent in you? And she said, not that I know of. English, German, and maybe Irish, but not that I know of. I don't have any Indian descent. And he says, well, he said, usually only Indians are allowed to see this. And he said, it comes to me that it showed itself to you because you're supposed to do something. And he said, I don't know what. He said, that's usually what we believe. And that was it. And like I said, I've seen it. And, you know, we were talking about skinwalkers and so on and so forth the other day, or a while ago. And if I can see a picture of a wolf spirit, there's got to be skinwalkers out there. There's just too many reports of them not being wendigos and so on and so forth.
And certain parts of what you said are true, as they say, togum, which is totem pole. That's the depiction of what you just described. And as me, as a wood carver, the wood spirits. That's why we see faces in the bark of the wood. And one can view who does artwork will be able to see something already represented and present to him. And that's your art. That's your work. When the tree dies, keep the existence of what we're showing you alive. So it's been explained to me through Navajo and different other from different tribal people. Not that I know a lot. I don't know all these, it's not like that. But there are people who carve that make representations and depictions of these particular type of things. But I can say this. I've seen enough genuine pictures of trees that represent humanity, sexual content, faces, ghostly apparitions, eagles, and chiefs, Indian chiefs, are some of the narratives. Also, the red orbs of that dimension where you can look into a red orb, and if you diagnose it and blow it up, you will see lighted eyes. You will see different uh, depictions of dimension where when this door or gate opens, of however they do it, however they can get in here, and this happens and occurs, you see all these different narratives of picture. Sometimes they look scary and fairy, and maybe that is of the possible truth. But in most cases, it could go either way. It could be of either or. And it just, in that moment where you catch it on film, on camera, on digital format, it's not all the way truly manifested and developed. But you're meant to catch what you catch. And I think you're supposed to understand it from that standpoint. Does it focus around the fact you're supposed to do something? The possibility exists, because that's when I started chainsaw carving. So how's about that?
Yeah.
I saw it in the wood, and I went over and did it.
Masters?
Pardon me?
You ever watch Main Cabin Masters on TV?
I know who they are. I've caught it, some stuff, but not all of it. But I know what they are. I know what they do.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that once in a while they'll have some guy, of course this up in Maine, carve a tree they cut down. And they've talked to him, they interviewed him, and he said, well, I look at it and I see an eagle or I see a bear or whatever, and then that's what he carves.
I don't know. I gotta somewhere along the line, I have to say it the same way, because I never picked up a chainsaw before, and I'm not saying I'm the best. Do you have your computer on right now?
I'm downstairs. No.
Okay, so you couldn't see it if I wanted to show it to you. I have some works of art around me, wood, that I've done. And if I picked them up,
I've seen them. You sent those to me.
Yeah, they get better, but they also get worse. I mean, you have good days, bad days, or bad wood. Things happen.
Oh yeah.
You misjudge something. Things do occur. But I got to tell you, I saw it in it, and the rest was because the wood showed me what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like tracing with a pencil.
Maybe get into this Indian mythology or Hindu mythology or whatever. But, who's to say that it's not all true? Not me. I'm not going to say it's not.
Well, I can't explain for what drew me to doing it, except for the fact that I saw it sitting there, and it had to be a message, because I looked at it for days. And I thought to myself, you can do it. No, I can't do it. You can do it. No, I can't do it. You can do it. Going back and forth, weighing one's, in a way, like weighing one's own mortality. But not like that, but going back and forth, I went over, I did it, and I said, oh my God, I just did that. And it ain't so bad. But again, there's a visual component that I think, in one's consciousness, in one's third eye, and in your own eyesight, whatever it is, you get it. And once you understand it, they teach you how to do it. They are actually my teachers.
Your friend tonight, and she's a psychic. I don't know if she's a medium or not, but and ask her why people can see these things and other people can't. She might enlighten you.
Well, I'll tell you what. You bring up an interesting.
Me.
you bring up an interesting point. I'm going to write it down. I am. I'm going to write that down for real, because it is an interesting point. It wasn't something on point for tonight, but it doesn't matter. It's a simple question, and I'm going to put it into a simple text of writing, so she can answer it as short as she can. Because you know what? I also have questions from other people from the last show that loved this young lady. They really did. So I'm just going to make, to ask that question. And yeah, I think it's well worth asking, because I know what I saw. I know it's something I experienced. Again, I don't know. Maybe she'll probably put it in some past life. You probably touched something, did something, was someplace else. But in a way, I feel like I'm a one-time rotation. I don't totally, for me as a person, we have dreams, we connect with things, we think, we theorize in our own minds. We don't talk about it to anybody because that's, we don't want to scare the people away that know us. But, you do self-analyze yourself. I don't feel like I was before. I feel like I was here for now. That's just me. I'm not saying that theories, because I believe in theories. I believe in discussions and data and talking to people. So, anyway.
Well, it may be that when you talk about something that somebody else hears, it might trigger something in them.
I think everything's meant for a reason. Yeah, you're right. Everything somehow, the possibility is it's all meant for a reason. All this shared everything, no matter if it's good or bad. It's been part of what Earth is. It's always been good versus evil. It's been light versus dark. It comes around, it goes around. It's back in the hands of them. It's back in the hands of those. Then we have the awakening, the better comes, and then it goes dark, and then we're in medieval times, and then we're in the days of the darkness, and then we're back into the light, and then we're back to the ice age. And, we've had like more than one ice age. We've had a lot of more than one effects of everything. Everybody reflects to the number one. And the facts of the matter are, we know history shows us much different than that scientifically. And what scientists, like I've said to people on many platforms, doesn't work for the government. They all do. Everything in science is sponsorships through government programs, donations, and ownerships. And that's where the suppression comes in for most of the information. And that's why it follows this way. Yes. And anything else you can figure out, even if it's friend of a daughter or someone's kid in political office that has a kid in this, and if he doesn't, go create it. We'll give you $2 million and you'll get payroll for a couple years. So they take these giant paychecks. And yeah, it's all about whatever. But anyway, I've had a very pleasant time with you, James. I really have. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed our segment today. The Dark Side Radio Network, part of Studio 10 Broadcasting, 10 o'clock talks. What an enjoyable talk and conversation with you, sir. I really do mean that. Thank you so much for joining me today, this Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a blast, man. I love good intellectual information, conversation, and it's been, delivered. You delivered like a rock star, and I can't wait to do another segment. We'll talk about it. Hopefully, we can build something to make a creation of a nice Sunday event every once in a while where we can attract some people that really enjoy this type of thing. And I know, and there's many of us out there. We just need to be seen and heard.
A lot of them just won't admit it, are afraid to.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, I'm going to send this off to B. Moss and a couple of our other friends out there and let some people, hopefully they'll make some comments. As we did it tonight, or this afternoon, I didn't set up a second monitor to relate into commentary or comments. I don't know who's been on, who's not been on. And it doesn't even matter to me. It doesn't even matter to me.
You would.
I'm sorry?
Send one to Odessa if you would, and B.
Okay, I'll do that. I will. I promise I will do that. But in a way, it doesn't even matter to me. I loved it, man. The connection's phenomenal. I hope you enjoyed some of my information and some of my knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
And God, I know we're both sitting on another whole storybook that the page hasn't even flipped yet to get to. So, can you make a promise where you can come back and hang out again?
Sure.
Awesome.
Sure can.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
I did.
Great. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody, but stay tuned. There is another segment coming up at 6:30 this evening. Special surprise is going to be joining us into health, well-being, insight, just everything. If you're into mystical and life after death and just information, stay tuned. Join us soon. We'll be back on shortly. Thanks again, Jim. We're cutting out. Have a great evening, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir.